Well, Ragnar, hello.
Hello, Christian. Hey,
It's good to be back talking governance again. I know there's a lot going
absolutely.
on. You've been doing stuff. I've been doing stuff, governance
Yep,
related stuff.
exactly. Busy week. I was traveling to a very large conference yesterday in Germany, being on the road, everything around Microsoft, a lot of news. And then there's also the European Soccer Championship, which keeps us busy. 50, 57 minutes. I have to be in front of the television when Germany is going to play against Hungary.
I'd always like, especially when I was living up in Seattle, making comments. I'd go to events, and I know that there was years ago. I can't remember if it was the European version. It was the of Ignite. It was the old, or like Ed or something. And for the party, for all the attendees, they actually put us in a stadium where they had giant screens at each end, and so we're sitting around eating schnitzel and pretzels, and people were drinking beer and watching the game. I'm just like so bored by that.
Yep,
Like, how do
yep.
people watch this game? I'm sorry, world.
Christian, I know how to get you into a more active state. Just watch some kind of sports game. Watch it with your governance glasses, with your governance eyes. It's a completely different experience because you can learn so much about governance, best practices, worst practices by just watching sports games because they are full of governance and full of compliance.
I love American basketball, and it's the same way. It's like the understanding the rules, the
Yep,
guardrails that need to be in place to keep
exactly.
sanity. And when
Exactly.
people break outside
Yep,
of those guardrails, what happens? Well, that's
yep.
sometimes where it's more interesting. But anyway, uh, thank you for everybody for joining us. Welcome to Guardians of M365 Governance, episode 6 of our monthly live stream. This is a Techie Guru series as a monthly webcast focused on the rapidly evolving and expanding Microsoft 365 governance story. Lots going on within this space always. Our goal is to share insights, best practices, and the latest information about new governance features and capabilities within M365. And this live stream is dedicated to anything and everything governance within the ecosystem. So if you have questions or comments or thoughts that we're not asking the right questions here as part of this event, please comment in your respective service. We're live streaming across LinkedIn, Facebook, X, YouTube. I think that's it today.
More channels.
Yeah, so please
Yeah.
comment, use your tools. We'll put it
Considering
up on the
also to
screen.
opening Instagram.
Yes. For this 6th episode, Ragnar and I welcome former MVP and now Senior Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft for Purview Records Management, Erica. Bring her to stage. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
It's
Wonderful,
great to
Erica.
have
Good to
you.
see you.
He was talking
Yeah,
about
thank
that, and I have to say this, Erica, and you know this because you hear this all the time, but every time I go, like I was just in Seattle a couple weeks back at the TechCon 5 event.
I had so much FOMO seeing everyone at the event. I mean, that's one of my favorite conference brands. They just do such a great job. And yeah, it's synonymous now with the Seattle experience. Hopefully next year.
Yeah, and for folks that don't know too, so Erica, I joke sometimes at how weekly I blog about music, and I tell people, I said, yeah, really, I just write these articles for Erica and maybe like 2 other people.
Because you have
And
really
that's
good music.
Yeah, well, you know most of the bands I write about too. Well, welcome. Maybe you can tell us, Erica, more about your background for the audience, and then we can jump in with some of our questions around Purview.
Sure. So my background is in SharePoint, a longtime member of the SharePoint community. That's how I know both of you. Also very focused in the governance area for my career. I was a consultant for most of my time. And then when the product marketing position for records management finally came around again at Microsoft, it just seems like such a great opportunity to innovate in that space and also continue to focus on governance.
It's a great base. So,
Yeah.
Ragnar, I know you wanted to kind of set the tone for the conversation here.
well, the thing is, Erica just mentioned FOMO. I also miss to see Erica, but Erica is actually staying on my desk every single day because as it's nice compliance. So you're definitely part of my desktop. I learned so much. I learned everything around compliance here from this book. So a strong recommendation to check out this book. You don't have to go to Amazon, just support your local book dealer. But this is really a go-to book for everything around M65 compliance.
The 2 that I keep that are in my closet on the shelf, because I used to have the bookshelves and they're gone now, so they're over in the closet.
Mhm.
I'd say Erica's and Tony Redmond's books are like my 2 go-to books. So if you don't know,
Yeah, Tony's is also go-to for me as well.
yeah. And not that Tony's officially sponsoring this, but one thing that I love that Tony does is that once you buy his book, which is the M365 administration, you get all the updates. So he continually adds addendums electronically to that. It's a great buy as well. So
Absolutely.
he needs to write me a check now. So let's
The one
talk
thing,
data governance.
My favorite topic.
exactly, yeah, exactly. And one thing, every time when I think about you, you have such a red path in your life around records management. So I know you since ages, and you were always, for me, connected with this topic of record management. That's very great to see that you landed in this marketing role at Microsoft. And that's also where we want to talk now about the latest and greatest around record management. There are some changes. I just have started to open Purview, and I also have now, I'm now in the preview of the new Purview portal. I have to admit that it's not so easy to find record management in the new Purview preview portal. But let's start first with the most basic question I could ever ask. Why should people care around record management in Purview? Could you please explain just the value proposition why record management in compliance is an important topic?
Yeah, so abstracting it maybe outside the Microsoft world, like just generally, why is this important? Records management is history. You're literally deciding what's valuable to keep and what can be deleted because it's impossible to keep everything and have the same level of care. And so you have to decide like what actually is worth the effort to preserve over time. The first records were like in Samaria, like the recipes on clay tablets about how to brew beer. And now, of course, we're doing this in the electronic age where maybe it's easier to have a large volume of content, but still you have to decide what to make sure isn't going to be corrupted, that people can access what they can't access, which is becoming more and more important in the age of AI. And then the other thing about records management is it's very important for governing people. If you want to know what your elected officials are doing, if there was a seatbelt issue at a car factory, it's going to be the discipline of records management that determines whether or not that information even exists for you to look at. But it is something that's really kind of core to keeping society functioning. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we get so focused on the day-to-day information governance, the technical aspects, that it's easy to forget the bigger picture of what we're doing and why.
You know, I often share the story of my first experience in records management. My first salaried position when I was 19 was for a law firm. Part of my responsibility was doing the long-term storage, transferring of files. And when files reached their 7 or 10-year age, they had to be properly destroyed. I had a senior partner, one of the founders of this law firm, mid-sized law firm in Sacramento, California, explained to me the importance of that role. And this was paper-based, going over to storage units that we
Mhm.
kept. It was like a library of multiple units to know where the files were, to go and find them, confirm it was everything, transform them to go and do that. But I got that understanding of the laws around certain types of files, why they held them, the purpose, that the risk involved with not destroying them on time, that it put the law firm, kind of all of that just instilled upon me. Now it was only, I went into a couple different roles, a couple years later, found myself in the information management space, and like in the mid 90s, learning about records management then. And actually my perspective on the word sprawl is that sprawl is a good thing. It means people are using it.
Okay.
However,
Mhm.
you have to understand what are the constraints of our system? What are the rules that we must comply with? And then do whatever you want in between those things, but as long as we're maintaining those rules. And then it's a constant management of that sprawl to say, okay, this is, I can categorize this. I see this activity, it should be treated this way. You're constantly moving these pieces. That's why records management is not a, hey, I went and cleaned all this up, we're done, walk away. You're constantly reviewing, are these policies still valid? Are we meeting these standards? Was the technology new? Things like Copilot out there. So how does Copilot react to the way that we are structured in using our data. Are people able to find the right content at the right time?
I would like to know more because I'm using Copilot, or I'm using Purview a lot for Copilot. I'm using the sensitivity labels and the audit logs to go into Copilot and see how users are using Copilot in my audit logs. But I actually never used records management for Copilot. So, Erica, what do you see personally as a value? What can record management contribute to the whole Copilot story to make it more safe and secure and combined?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's really three pillars I think of in terms of records management. And let's just keep it scoped maybe at Copilot for M365 for this example. First is, of course, the prompts and responses themselves. So how are you retaining those? Like, how long do you want to keep them? Do you want to delete them? I see organizations either want to delete them very quickly or want to keep them kind of indefinitely. Those are the two camps that people are falling into. The next pillar is really around readiness for Copilot. And this is just the stuff we've been talking about for, I don't know, ever since electronic content was invented. Managing the general life cycle so that uh, you don't have a lot of redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. As an example, Copilot cites what sources it uses when in a response. If there's a document, it'll have a link to it. But it's hard to tell maybe from the link, which is the document's name. Is this the most current version? Is this an old version? It's harder to tell if this is the source of truth. And then
Yeah.
lastly is around leveraging Gen AI models to actually do the administration of records management. So how can we get better insights into policies that we could create? How can we summarize a whole bunch of alerts, audit information, metadata about what's going on in a records management system into groupings that are easier to understand than looking at thousands of rows? So those are the three ways that I think about records management in Copilot.
It's like
Well,
the
with
art
me,
side of records management. Look, you have these standards. Here's these best practices of what to go and do. This is why it's an ongoing activity, is that your business needs change. The technology gets updated and does different things. You still need to have those basics, again, those guardrails in place, the lifecycle management. It's why I love the concept of templating, of provisioning sites rather than allowing free form creation of anybody can create a team. Everybody can create a SharePoint site. Here are the templates that were pre-provisioned to make sure that these rules are being followed, that the data is being classified in a certain way and organized. I think it's just an essential part of modern information management to have that level of automation for the creation process, just to keep things moving in the right direction.
Erica, you were just saying maybe one of the most important sentences here in this whole session, because when Christian and myself, we did a lot of webinars over the last month regarding Copilot and governance. We usually talked about more these security things like take care of your permissions, make sure that you're using sensitivity labels, prevent oversharing. So it was always more focused on the permission side. But your topic is now very helpful because here we're talking about outdated content. If you don't care about deletion, your end users are going to be irritated because they ask Copilot, this is the truth, but they get really bad answers based on outdated content. And this is a very important thing because users, they don't care so much about cleaning up things. And therefore we need to have rules and rules-based cleanup and different kind of life cycle where we not only care about paper bin and the recycle bin of 1 and 2 stages, but also about the permanent deletion and all these policies. So at the end, it's going to improve the quality of the Copilot experience massively. So it's not only about the permissions.
Yeah, and the other thing is you don't have to secure information that you don't have. So
Yeah.
they go hand in hand. I mean, security is absolutely the most important thing to do to prepare for Copilot. The lifecycle stuff it makes it easier. And since you're doing a governance type of initiative anyway, it's super easy to just kind of attach it and do it at the same time. Because at the end of the day, the best governance systems are ones where the users don't have to participate or know that it's happening, ideally, and you're automating the classification. So might as well do them together and have an even better result.
Well, I think it becomes even more important now that you have the ability to create a co-pilot for as part of your deployment model for SharePoint. To go in there and have a very specified co-pilot in that experience for that subset of data that's only relevant to that project, to that site. Again, it's important that you have the right data in there, that it's updated, it's the latest, so that you're not, I think it's the same problem broadly when you think about search. Search gets bogged down, it gets muddied when you have a bunch of old, outdated data that needs to be cleaned up, replaced. It lessens the search experiences, and ultimately users, when you go in and you're getting bad results on your searches, you then move elsewhere. So to keep people engaged and keep them focused and getting their work done, it's that right data at the right time. And a lot of that has to do with how much are we doing on the back end to make sure that the data is going the right places.
And one thing I notice, people who buy into this idea, do the minimum at first. Like, don't try to build the perfect system. Just do something and then build on it over time. Perfection is actually the enemy of governance and lifecycle management.
The Pareto rule, 80-20.
I mean, I would even start with 20/80 is fine, just when you're getting started.
Reverse Pareto.
It'll be a journey.
Yeah.
You're going to learn
Awesome.
stuff along the way that you didn't know at the beginning that'll be key to doing it in alignment with your company's culture.
Yeah. What would be your top 3 things to reach this 20 level? What are the top 3 recommendations regarding Purview record management? Where should people start? What are your concrete call to actions? Where can they start immediately?
So start with a pilot, obviously. It could be the same group of people that are doing your co-pilot pilot or that you're testing out the sensitivity labels to prevent oversharing with, and expand from there. For the very first one, don't start with the most important information. Like, pick something that's important and valuable, but not like too important. When you feel like you've got it right enough and you've tested your hypotheses, then start in your actual deployment with some of the higher risk data and, get that going first, move on and tackle groups of users or groups of business function as you go along. So that's one approach. And then the other approach, it would be just do some blanket policies for the organization. But those you have to realize will be temporary because it will sometimes impact productivity or really blow up your site quota for storage. And so, you will want to get a bit more specific as time goes on.
But of course, start here with the guidelines, with the policies, and define them, go on then into the scoping part, into how they call it in English, the adaptive scopes, or what is the name? I'm currently using Purview here in German. I think it's called.
Yep, that's what they're called, yeah.
Adaptive scopes.
I think this would say adaptive scopes at the top, right?
Yeah, adaptive scope. So first, there's this overview about all the deletions which are currently planned, and then the planning phase. And then here I can start with the planning. Got a few things here running around GDPR planning and some MEA things.
The adaptive scope.
And then there are the adaptive scopes. And then I've got the guidelines to say, okay, this user should use this guideline. And then the events, and then everything around deletion. I would also like to know a bit more, if you know it, around the new AI portal, if records management is going to be part of the AI portal, because this looks very interesting. I really like dashboards. That's my governance background. I love dashboards. Do you know if we can get some information coming from your team in this new AI hub, how it's
Well,
going?
anything AI is going to be announced as part of a big marketing moment. And so I won't be able to comment on AI roadmap, in this forum. But I think the vision for the AI hub is to provide the insights people need to manage risk and govern AI usage in their organization. So it will continue to improve and add more functionality to accomplish that.
I've heard the comment a lot when people want to be able to go in and ask Copilot for records management questions about to find a specific project or data around an individual or a case. and what's out there to find out what over the next 30 days before I go on my vacation, what is going to be the review cycle, like what is out there that's coming up that I'm going to need to review and take care of, or with the latest changes, what are the impacts to the way that I have architected out my solution? What changes do I need to be made to take advantage of this new feature? I mean, questions like that about the data
is a solution, because if we sometimes feel overwhelmed by the massive amount of new features, there is help, because everybody knows the beautiful messaging center. There are also podcasts about it from Daryl and from Daniel, and Erica had just posted 17 hours ago on LinkedIn that now you can filter on Purview here.
Yeah,
You should
that's
just
like
go here on the filters, just go here down for Purview, and then you can only see the highlights regarding Purview.
that one was a huge deal. So I normally wouldn't talk about this. We're friends. So the roadmap was my side quest internally. You know, those jobs that you take because like it's the right thing to do, but like no one's gonna ever like give you, it's not really your role. Just like most products at Microsoft, we weren't managing our roadmap communications well. So I started to share a list for records management to track our roadmap, because there's a bunch of places that we have to like manually populate the roadmap information. And it was so difficult to like go to each individual product manager and be like, when is this, what are the dates for this feature? Because they changed so much. Well, my coworkers on my team saw this. They're like, oh my God, can I please use this? And now at this point, I manage a full-time vendor, making sure all of our Purview items are up to date, that every feature has a roadmap item for both government and commercial and MC posts. And so that volume is what finally got us our own category in the message center. And, you know, it's just so foundational that people know what's being released in their tenants. And so I'm really happy that the Purview leadership also agreed with that, and that every product manager has decided it's important enough to spend their time on as well.
No, that's great. And I also found out here that there's a great page, which I wasn't aware of. There is one website I'm going to share right in 1 second here. It's learn.microsoft.com/EN depending on your language, and then Pureview, and then what's new, what's hyphen new. And then you can see all the latest, greatest, what's happening around the Pureview world. So this was refreshed 1 week ago, and the highlights were that there is a new column, new Outlook for Windows included here, and then also new privacy controls for sensitivity labels, and then the AI hub we just talked about. So make sure to check this out. This is full of all the latest and greatest regarding Pureview updates. Not only here from Erica's side on the record management side, also everything from Christoph Fiesinger with communication compliance and other people.
Within the MVP community for years, we were providing feedback. Remember the old roadmap site, and saying that, hey, this needs to be more active. This should be alive, not just updated on a whim. It wasn't even, it was an irregular schedule when things, like back to your comment, Erica, it was the product teams, the various teams and individuals that were responsible. And so maybe it got updated or not. It's much more of a living, breathing site. I jokingly say I would love to have Copilot for the roadmap site, just to be able to ask questions and things, but to be able to go and filter on the products and services too, to be able to go in, like I'd still love to see the next generation of this where it recognizes me by my login and knows what environments I own and manage, and then caters to what licenses I own. Like that would be fantastic.
All right. Well, I might know who owns that product. I will bring that up. That's a great idea.
This goes back to, I mean, the running joke that's still out there is that you need to have a PhD to understand Microsoft licensing in general, but specifically around an area like this, to be able to go in and for it to recognize my system and what's relevant, the next best thing would be to have Copilot in on the roadmap. So at least I could ask questions. It may not automatically provide those, but I can go in and ask it based on this data that's being updated however often. I have these licenses. Here's my profile. That's a way of kind of getting to that future vision. But
love that. I mean, someone could probably build a Copilot to do that today.
Maybe we could get Tom Daly to go build.
That's also a topic which I found very interesting. Erica, we had Christoph Twierhaus around Loop a few weeks ago in our show, and then we talked about the container structure with Azure file storage containers. and SharePoint Embedded, who is also using it. I think this is also one of the newest topics that you can really use the record management around the containers, which are going to be used in Loop, which are going to be used in SharePoint Embed. So that's something where I haven't seen anybody talking about.
Yeah, I
Is
mean, I
this
think that's
moving
one
of
of the huge
labels.
value props of SharePoint Embedded is, you get the Purview value as well. Like, there's really no difference from a Purview perspective between an active and an
Mhm.
archived site. So I'm really glad that
Yep,
people are building um, compliance into their products from the beginning now.
exactly. No, that's a super important topic. So when we had this conversation with Christoph, we said, hey, listen, is really Loop already 100% enterprise ready? And then we said, yes, here it's ready, but here not. And so I think this is definitely the right direction to make Loop really enterprise grade ready on the compliance side. On the end user side, it's a wonderful product, it works great. But here we also have to think about compliance. So I'm more than happy to see that labels can be also here moved and attached to the containers.
Let me just comment on the Loop side. My feeling is that it's not yet ready for enterprise and for the pieces. I understanding how Loop works and where it stores data, how it allows misuse of sensitive content. It's really easy to break some of the inheritance of sensitivity labels. There's just key pieces that are missing there, which is a reason why a lot of organizations are playing with it, piloting, but it's not fully supported, or they might turn that off initially. It was interesting. Great experience. I was in like a month and a half ago, was in Denver for the ComsV Next event. So if you're into Teams and all of the telephony features around the voice options around, there's two events in the world. One's the Comsverse, which is outside of London, and then ComsV Next, which is in Denver. The Loop product team had members there, and we're talking about some of these. And so I got to ask some of those questions, and they weren't aware of some of the scenarios and some of the gaps in the features.
Because they're not coming from the SharePoint world. Yeah.
Right.
And Erica is one of the leading experts here globally regarding SharePoint and record management. So what are your thoughts regarding the marketing in your marketing role? Do customers come to you and say, listen, we need record management in Loop? Or is this really a customer topic to have record management in Loop? Or are we just
Yeah,
inventing what a demand?
I'll be honest, I don't hear people ask about Loop very much in customer conversations, but I'll caveat that by saying one of the toughest things I've had to learn personally in this role is how to scale. And we have
Mhm.
experts now on records management in every country in the world for both sales side and usage. I only really hear about things now when they become a problem and there's a problem
Yeah.
systemically that needs to be solved. I get to hear from user groups, which is great, but
Mhm.
I do miss a lot of those one-on-one customer conversations. So I haven't heard it, but that doesn't mean the conversations aren't happening at all.
This is one of those things too. And when people have feedback, whether it's we're here talking, we're nerding out a bit on Loop because it's something I use almost every day. I point people constantly over to the Microsoft tech community to go find the related product, because the product teams are generally active out on those pages and trying to answer questions. But that would be a great place to surface those questions. And I don't know what the rules are. I mean, with the roadmap site or the old roadmap site where people would put in feature requests, and there was like a minimal number of upvotes on an item before the product team would go in and respond. It was like 5. It was really low. So I don't know what's guiding Microsoft's input on things out in tech community, but that's again a place I would go and highly recommend that if you find a gap with a feature anywhere within that. So I know, Erica, are you actively on tech community site looking at following any of those conversations, or do you have to be at mentioned? Should we recommend everyone at mention Erica Tully?
Well, it's hard. There's so many teams and yammers and different places. I would honestly never get my actual job done if I looked at
Mm.
them all. I might see it if you had mentioned me. I would hope one of our community experts would see it. We actually have a team called CAT, Customer Adoption Team, that's monitoring those channels. They are part of the product group. If they don't know the answer, they'll IM me on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for Purview, the best way to have someone see your feedback, if it's actually a key in blocking your deployment, is a design change request, which is called a DCR, that you can file it through Microsoft support. Everyone definitely sees those. And then also, if you are a company that's large enough to have a Microsoft account team, raising an issue through them, we have an internal process to triage
The one
those
is
we use to track it. We
yeah.
have a CRM system we use to track feature requests for
I'm
Purview.
always a big fan of using the official ways, because otherwise you are expecting too much from Microsoft. You are creating a nice feature thing somewhere in a or LinkedIn thread, and then you are disappointed because nobody is reacting. So always use the official channels and not over rely on social media.
Well, again, that's why I say if you go and post your issue that identify the gap, if you do that in the Microsoft tech community, so it's a managed platform by Microsoft, and then
Yeah.
share it with people in your community in your niche over there around that, you get people liking that, commenting on that. That'll raise the profile of it there, and then it's more likely that somebody in Microsoft
Exactly.
will see it and respond to it. That is an official channel. That's a place to go. I love the fact that I know Erica, so if I had a question, I could reach out to her directly and she will respond. Not everybody can go and do that, although we'll
Yeah.
share her phone number and email, of course, afterwards.
I try to answer as much as I can, but
Yeah.
you know,
I always used to joke like with Bill Bear back in the SharePoint days, and I would at conferences, I would freely give out his work email. He authorized that, but it's just kind of funny. People are like, "Oh my gosh, you're giving," but again, I would put his email like up on screen, ask your questions here. But uh, again, I agree. Go through the official channels. Microsoft can't make changes if they don't understand what the experience is for customers from users.
the thing is, like, the volume of feedback is insane. And also, the decisions you have to make about what to develop next are really difficult. We actually need to know the company's name that's requesting the feature. And if it's on social media, it's like
Mhm.
Christian Party of One asked for
Right.
this instead of if you're representing the opinion of a 50,000 person organization or even a 1,000 person organization, your vote counts
Yeah.
much more.
No, fully understood. Yep.
And our
Mhm.
executives want to know like what customers are actually asking for this
Yeah.
about
No.
our
I work
investment.
in sales. I fully understand it.
I know
Yeah.
we need to wrap up here, Ragnar. I was just
Exactly.
going to say that one thing that I'm also a huge advocate, of course, are the community calls, the various discussions on a regular basis for a lot of different product areas. There are open, obviously, as MVPs, like we have access to all of these NDA only phone calls. We get advanced warnings, but there are public, conversations, the patterns and practices teams, and having conversations there. Is there like a running community focused call around records management?
There isn't a regular monthly meeting. We do probably quarterly. We probably should get on a better consistent schedule, but there's a security community that does public webinars that are streamed on YouTube. We'll do a quarterly update through that. And then we have a NDA customer connection program. That's where we run all of our private previews. Our product managers do monitor that internal channel. I'll put the URL to sign up in the chat, but there's one for records management as well as all the other Purview products and security products as well. So if you're interested, you have an NDA with Microsoft, which if your company owns Microsoft licenses, you have an NDA. Definitely recommend signing up for that. I used to be really good about posting about new features on social media, but like the volume of work is like
It's a lot.
insane.
Yeah.
Like
But it's all about what I'm always doing is just make a series in your own calendar, like half an hour every single week, and say, this is my time where I'm publishing news to social media. So just reserve the time for you, also as
I
a reminder, as a focus time thing, but also to make sure that you don't forget it, because it's so important to share it, because not everybody goes to learn.microsoft.com.
I really
Because
wish I had a half an hour every week.
yeah.
And well, and there are, of
Well,
course, there.
thanks so much that you have like 45 minutes for us. So that's
Yeah.
highly appreciated.
I
Absolutely.
was going to say that there are other, I know Microsoft historically has been very active in other industry groups. There's, of course, AIM.org and ARMA and other groups like that where they focus a lot on compliance and records management. So if you're a member of
Yeah.
those or aware of those different groups as well, you get a lot of, and then like anything within the Microsoft ecosystem is what I do for roadmap updates, I follow a couple podcasts or live streams. I really like, Daryl and Daniel's, the M365 Message Center updates is probably the one that I watch the most to get
Yeah,
updates. It depends on the topics, but find those, follow those voices, usually MVP driven. That's a great way to stay on top of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so thankful for the people who spend their time doing that because honestly, that's how we scale. I'll focus on making sure the roadmap and the MC post information is accurate so then they can disseminate the information. Thank you. That is a really great resource. So,
Back in the olden days so a long time ago, it used to be easier to go in and focus. Like I was a SharePoint MVP initially, as you were, Erica, and Ragnar. Well, actually, Ragnar, you started as a Yammer MVP initially?
Yeah, but when
you-
I become an MP, there was M65
Okay.
services or
All right, so-
O65 apps and services,
Oh, yeah.
so no
So,
YAML. Yeah.
okay, so day one. So I know that folks don't know Ragnar was at Microsoft, and pretty much the day he left, he got knighted as an MVP. But he was already doing all the stuff in the community. But again, it was in the simpler times, having that focus. Now, so many of us that come from that shared background, we're spread across so many different products and areas. So even in the last 15 years, it's amazing to see how much complexity has been added. So there's so much out there. So it's why it's recommended that you go find the voices that you trust, the MVPs that have that more specialized focus around there, and follow their shows, subscribe to their YouTube. And that's, of course, the customer connection program there.
Shout out to Joanne Klein, MVP. Amazing job of covering records management. You can trust the accuracy of her information. If
Yep.
she's not sure, she checks with us.
And she and David Drever have their new show, and they were
Yeah.
one of our first guests as well. Joanne's I've got a small group of people, the voices that I turn to around all things governance. Joanne's on that list, David, people like Richard Harbridge on there, Sue Handley. There's like a core group of folks that I follow and make sure when they're discussing something, yes, that I know I need to go and read more and find out about that thing if they're highlighting it.
Yeah.
No. Well, with that, Erica, thank you so much for being our guest. I know we've been talking about it only for like 3 months, trying to find and schedule and get things together with everything going on. And you had to move in the meantime. So really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for hosting this show and providing this opportunity, but also for sticking with it and inviting me to be a guest.
Well, it's great
Always
to
a
have
pleasure,
you.
Erica.
Well, Ragnar, I know that it's end of your day. It's still the beginning of mine. Really appreciate your time. And for folks watching, again, thank you for joining us. If you have any follow-up questions, please get back to us. Keep reaching out through social, because you can find Ragnar and I and Erica pretty easily out there. We're all very active on social. If you have ideas for future topics, we're already talking with 4 speakers we're chasing, but we are a monthly show. We're locking down that date. It's going to be in the middle or the second half of the month, like on Wednesdays at the same time. So we're going to make it more consistent, easy to find us. But you can find back episodes out on YouTube. Ragnar has those posted out there. You'll see us out in socials. Be sure to follow. And we'll see you in a month. Right?
Thanks again, Erica.
Bye, everybody.